Today, I'm joined by one of the most experienced and perhaps underrated footballers to ever have featured in the A-League, Matt Thompson, formerly of Newcastle Jets, Sydney FC, and Melbourne Heart. Thank you so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, my first question is always a bit of a softball one. It's just, where did your passion and love for football first begin?
I think it was just more of a bit of a male orientated. Actually, I probably can't say that these days, but it was back in the day when I was about 4 or 5. It was a bit of a male orientated. My dad had 5 brothers, and my mum had 5 brothers as well. So we spent all the weekends going to watch uncles and the old man play and all that sort of thing. So obviously, the ladies' game has developed second to none since then. But I guess back in those days, there wasn't a lot being played. But yeah, mate, I think it was just a matter of just being around it a little bit. Obviously, all my family members were there, and I guess it was a no-brainer that the ball was at the feet most of the time, whether I was a ball boy or just on the behind the goals with all the other kids just kicking the ball around.
Was football always your goal to pursue as a career, or was it something that you kind of maybe just got into the rep teams and then all of a sudden you found yourself, in this life of professional football?
I fell into it, mate. To be honest with you, like I still don't necessarily follow it, and that's probably not what you want to hear, but it was just something that I did. Um, and I think I remember sitting at home when I was about even 15, 16 year old in Western Sydney, and the National League um, results would come up on the TV. And I supported Newcastle in England because I liked Alan Shearer because I guess he was scoring all the goals at the time. So I just thought, okay, they'll do. So when the NSL results came up, I just thought, okay, how did the Newcastle team go here? And that was as far as it went. Like I didn't really know anything more about it. And it was literally 18 months later, I signed my first National League contract at Parramatta Power. But it wasn't something that I followed. Like it wasn't. I was like I said, at Parramatta Power where I started, and we had like the likes of Milan Blagojevic, who was an absolute freak of a player. Um, I remember just being overawed and overwhelmed and all of the above, and when he would play, and I didn't realise till a couple of years later that I actually had stickers of him on the back of my door, um, representing the country and all that. So I obviously paid no attention to who they were. It was the sticker itself that I probably paid more attention to growing up. But yeah, I actually had no idea. Like I said, it wasn't something that I said, I'm going to be a footballer, or had someone older than me that said, look, I want to do what they do, or anything like that. I had other interests. We played cricket, we swam, we went to the beach. We played basketball. I mean, we're in Australia, right? So everyone's got a few options there growing up. But yeah, I guess I was at Macarthur Rams at the time, which was my rep team, and I think the last couple of years before I went to Parramatta, I think I went under 14s, and then the next year at 15s I played 18s, and then when I was 16 I played 21. So I think the last 2 years it sort of progressed a lot quicker than what I thought, and then yeah, I signed with my Parramatta Power at 17. That was my first contract, and I thought, okay, well maybe this is what I'm going to do. So that's when I figured it out.
I mean, back in the day, particularly the early 2000s, the NSL sort of seemed to have a habit of giving a lot of young boys a chance. I know Andrew Durante was a young defender who just broke through as a teenager. I spoke to Alex Wilkinson just a moment ago. I think he was 17 when he broke through as well. You were quite young when you broke through as well. And it's usually nowadays in the A-League, if you see a footballer come through so early on at such a young age, they'll be a striker or a winger or something, not so much a midfielder or a defensive player. So for you breaking through as a teenager, being a young boy, how do you think you went? Did you maybe get battered off the ball a little bit, or were you confident and composed from the get-go?
I mean, look, I was lucky enough, I guess, the year before that, like I said, to play against in the under 21. So that obviously, I guess, prepared me at some level to at least, we trained with the first grade team, right? 21 straight with the first grade team. So I was already getting smashed around, you know what I mean? I guess, but at the same time, obviously, I was like you said, like the likes of Andrew and Alex and that, and like myself, we're all sort of there for a reason that we did okay. So I guess it sort of prepped I mean, the level up again is dramatic, but yeah, it probably put us in good stead. But I mean, even in that first year, mate, like I wasn't playing every game in the first grade. Like I signed at like a what was it a youth contract, so I spent most of my year playing youth, and I think I played the last 3 games in first grade. You know what I mean? So I'd imagine I might have ticked over, could have ticked over at 18. I don't think so. I think I was still 17 at the time. I actually signed on my birthday in August. And then obviously did the season that summer. That summer. So I think at the end of that next season, I got 3 games in, and then I think the year after that, I was a regular. So, but yeah, mate. Look, as far as how I went, I have no idea. Like, we're probably still at that time where we were still telling everyone we didn't have to go to school. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't so much what we were doing; it was what we didn't have to, what we didn't have to do. Um, so yeah, I think I spent more time at school when I started my full time contract than what I did when I was actually supposed to be there. Um, Funny enough, but yeah, look, I think it went okay.
Now, unfortunately, with the NSL, it kind of pretty much, crashed and burned quite quickly, and a lot of footballers were left without a club. There was a big period, I think it was 18, 19 months between the NSL and A-League starting. A lot of, uncertainty about players' careers and futures and everything like that. You were still a young bloke with, not a certain guarantee that this new league's going to give you a job, let alone be financially viable. Was there ever a moment where you thought maybe walking away from football and doing something else was perhaps something you should do, or were you always sort of set on going to the A League and trying to have a crack at it?
Well, I might have got a bit lucky. So I went and played at Marconi because they were had a comp. There was still obviously that comp running. Um, and I was lucky enough to have John Paul Demarini coach there. And I was there with Nicky Carl and Dean Heffernan and Paul O'Grady. Um, and I remember being there, and JP got the gig at Newcastle. So I was probably lucky enough to have a few conversations while I was there about it. So I sort of thought that there could have been something there, but I did go get a job. I went and worked at Sony Warehouse in Chullora in Sydney. My brother was working there at the time, and I sort of didn't sit down and do nothing because obviously nothing's ever never a sure thing. So I went and worked at the warehouse and stacked some trucks and got up at 5 o'clock and started working at 5:36. And it was funny. I felt normal in a way because for 5 years from 17 to 21, I think it was 5 years at Parramatta. So 21, 22, whatever I was. Sort of teenage sort of life disappeared. All your mates started going out. And you were doing recovery sessions for the other reasons. They were doing them as well, but for different reasons. Um, yeah, but yeah, and I guess when we were 22, went and played at Marconi and got a job and was training 2 nights a week and had my weekends sort of free and nothing was as serious. And, I started being a kid. You know what I mean? It was interesting. I remember saying to my mum at the time, I felt like a normal kid all of a sudden because I sort of missed out for 5 years on every, which is probably not a bad thing, to be fair. But yeah, and then obviously the Newcastle thing popped up, like I said, 18 months later, but it didn't feel like that long for some reason. I felt like Newcastle got together because we had what was that tournament before the actual season started? And yeah, we felt like we were 4 months before that, and that went for about 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it was. And then we did the whole preseason again before the season started. So that felt like it was ages. And then, like I said, I was at Marconi for about 4 or 5 months, I think it was about that, a good 15 games or something. And that's where I met Nicky Carl and JP. And like I said, a few boys went to the Mariners and a couple of us went to Newcastle. So, yeah, far out. Forgot about that.
You were such a regular too at Newcastle pretty much from the get-go when you started playing some unbelievable football. Now, what was it about this whole A-League and Newcastle setup you think that started to get the best out of you? And was that break from football probably a bit of a good refresher for you, when you get back on the pitch playing professionally? Maybe you enjoyed it twice as much as you did before.
it's funny you mentioned that. Look, maybe it did. I've actually never looked at that break or that time and thought, did it do anything for me? I guess progressing or anything like that. But looking at it back now, yeah, it might have been a nice break that was needed. I mean, like I said, I went out sort of thing, and I'm not saying I did anything bad or anything like that, but like I said, it was just I grew up in, like I said, a Western Sydney, so all my mates were there, and then I went and played at Parramatta and sort of lost touch with them for 5 months. Sorry, for 5 years. But then obviously having that break, I think where was I living? I think I might have even been moved back down at home. So I was hanging out with my mates again that I grew up with, and so it was awesome. But in terms of what it did from Newcastle, I think Newcastle was just an excitement thing because it was a new league. Like we'd obviously heard a lot about it leading into it. New players, exciting times. There was only eight teams in it, and it's going from 18 or something to 8 or whatever it was. So that's a pretty crazy. But no, I just remember enjoying it straight away. Like I moved to Newcastle, didn't know much of it. I think I remember Adamstown Rosebuds ground a couple of times because we played there from when I was a young lad. But it wasn't much I knew about the area. But now that I'm back here now. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's definitely a place that I know why I liked it. Put it that way.
I mean, you did have some incredible success at Newcastle. I don't need to tell you this. You lived it. You were part of Newcastle's amazing, only to this day, grand final win. I can't remember a time where I've seen so many people just get behind the team. It seemed like not just the whole community of Newcastle was behind them. It seemed like the whole league was just behind this team and this match because Mariners are quite popular too. Playing against your rivals, winning the whole thing. What was that whole experience like for you? And for those big games where you're playing in front of a packed house, all the pressure of a cup final, how do you personally deal with it mentally? Do you have any sort of superstitions, or do you just kind of try and view it as another game?
I think back then, man. Like I said, because take, I don't follow football. I don't take it too seriously. Um, and look, that could be another different conversation. That could have been a downfall as well. But I sort of treated it like it was another game. You know what I mean? And it was just something that we. Oh my God, I can't speak for everyone else. It's just something that I did. You know what I mean? I didn't live and breathe. I didn't get up at 2 a.m. and watch the FA Cup finals and Champions League and all these. I didn't. I watched the State of Origin. That's what I watched. You know what I mean? So um, it was something. When I look back on it now, I remember things that stand out for me was when we got on the bus at Adamstown to travel down to Sydney the day or 2 days prior to the game, the grand final, like driving out of Newcastle all the way to the freeway. People were actually, I think it was the day before, actually, people were pulled over on the side of the road, for 15, 20 kilometres with flags. You know what I mean? We drove past a cricket game that stopped as we drove past the clappers. You know what I mean? Like, we just remember thinking, we were sort of looking at each other on the bus thinking, far out. Like, this is crazy. This is unreal. Like, we didn't think that was going to happen. We had no idea. We just got on the bus and we thought we'll see everyone at the game. And, people were pulled over on the side like they knew we were driving past at that time. Like, it was planned. Like, they physically drove there to pull over to get out of the flag or whatever it was and wait for the bus to drive past. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, how many times I drive past a cricket game now and you still try and get that ball in. You still try and watch a ball being bowled just out
Yeah.
of curiosity. I don't know why everyone does it, but I do it just to see if I can see a catch or whatever. But if you can picture that moment, like where you sort of, I'm assuming everyone on the bus is probably just doing the same thing, but all the cricket players literally turned and faced the bus and just started clapping. And this is all from, like 100 meters away. And I look at that and go, that's nuts. That's ridiculous. Like, this is just a game. You know what I mean? Like, we're just having a kick around tomorrow. But to them, I guess it wasn't just a game. And I think playing against the Mariners might have had something to do with that. But it was a great feeling, mate. Even the lead into it, as much as we joke around and we're all ages from 17, 18 to whatever the oldest was at the time. We had a bit of a mix, but the night before the game, we all sat down as a group and just talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours amongst ourselves, like the whole group, about what the game would mean to everyone. And keeping a group of a group of guys quiet for that long or serious for that long seems unheard of, but we were. And it was that moment that maybe we sort of looked at it and thought, wow, this is, we want to do right here. You know what I mean? Like we actually probably put our adult boots on or our caps on or whatever it is that we did, and the transformation happened that night before. And lucky enough for us, Bridgie scored a cracking goal, and it was it was an awesome feeling, an awesome feeling.
It's confirmed. It ends in drama, in controversy, but take nothing away from the Jets. Newcastle claim a first ever championship. Gary Van Egmond has completed the task given to him when they were bottom of the league last season. And the city that's produced some of the game's most famous and historic names, Ray Bartz, Cole Curran, Reg Date, Craig Johnston, now has a team of heroes and finally a title to go with it. Listen to this, everybody in the Hunter. Newcastle Jets are the champions of Australia.
And you after this, you moved to Melbourne Heart, which was a brand new side, right down, a different state. It's very different. I moved from Bathurst to the border of Victoria, and even being on the border, it's just such a different world down there. So, what made you decide to take the plunge to Victoria with this new squad? And, how different was it going from Western Sydney, Newcastle sort of area to Melbourne for you?
Oh, the truth is, mate, I didn't get an offer from Newcastle Jets anyway, so that's been up front, right? I mean, I got an offer after they already knew what I got offered, which was a sympathy, oh, here you go sort of thing. But I didn't have an option to stay. I had options elsewhere, but Melbourne seemed like the right fit, and I'm glad I did it. It was I was a bit older. Obviously been around the game. That was 10 years. Obviously 5 years at Para and 5 years at Newcastle. I was at Newcastle 5 years. So I was obviously 10 years, I guess, one of the older players, which is quite ironic because I remember sitting down at the first Melbourne Heart meeting and I felt 18 again because, we had all national team players in the team. We had Aloisi, Skoko, Beecham, who has Wayne Shrow, Clint Bolton. I was sort of looking around, thinking, I don't think I should be here. I'm in the wrong restaurant. It was our first meeting as a team. We had a lunch down at Lygon Street in Melbourne, and I just remember thinking this is probably going to be a step up again. And it was. I loved it. It was a great experience. Completely different town, obviously, than Newcastle. And I loved every moment of Melbourne. To be honest with you, it was a shame that it ended when it did. I was a bit gutted by that because we loved it. We loved it there. It was a great club. It was a step up above again to Newcastle. But I guess the fact that the league had been around a bit longer, like obviously clubs get to know what works and what doesn't by then, of course, too. So, but yeah, that was an amazing experience. That 3 years that I was there, and yeah, I loved every minute of it.
I think you're actually, if you weren't the first, I think you were the second or third ever signing for Melbourne Heart, and you were made the captain. You're talking about boys like Aloisi, Skoko, Beecham, all these big careers, big leaders. What was it like for you to not only join this new club with all these good players, brand new, clean slate, but also be the captain, telling a bloke like John Aloisi what to do? Was that a bit daunting, or did that not really matter to you since, as you said, you weren't really a football fan?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I guess at some point, like I said, because you're a bit older, I mean, yes, when given the opportunity to captain any side is a great feeling, but to have those certain players that you're not in charge of by any means, but to get that respect from the coach, and I sort of felt like I was probably at an age where I guess it was just football. That's just how football works. It sort of didn't matter what age you were. I mean, we were all one. We were a team, so it didn't matter how old you were in terms of who had the armband and whatnot. I mean, at that level as well. I mean, everyone's a leader at some level, and I definitely wasn't telling them what to do by all means. But maybe the position, I was obviously a stopper. I adopted a new role at the club. John Von Ship gave me a completely different role. So obviously maybe being at the backs because I could see it all made, I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking. Hope he doesn't regret it. But look, again, it was just one of those feelings of this is awesome. Like, I didn't feel like, not in an arrogant way, but I sort of thought that's great that he's picked me, but nothing really changed from a onto the pitch sort of things. Everything, yeah. If I had a change, that would have been the wrong thing to do. Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
around this
I wasn't telling John Aloisi what to do. I can tell you right now.
around this same sort of time, like you must have had a really busy 12 months. You moved to Melbourne Heart. You also got selected for the Socceroos. You played for the Socceroos. Unfortunately, your debut was one of the most infamous games in Australian history. Archie Thompson spoke at length about it. The heat, the humidity. The coach didn't really rate the A-League boys. So, what was that experience for you? Being in the Socceroos in this tough match with a coach who pretty much has flat out said in the media that he doesn't think the A-League's good and he doesn't think the players are any good.
You know what, mate? I didn't even know about the Archie Thompson that conversation. There you go. So I don't follow it. I didn't know anything about it. I remember Pim, like through the grapevine, saying that the level is what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like in a roundabout way. I didn't take offence because it probably is. Right. So whether or not you're supposed to say that or not, I mean, he's obviously with a Dutch background. My grandfather's Dutch, and sometimes I think he just needs to not say something. I don't think he meant anything by it. It was literally just coming out and saying that's what he thought, But it's funny because I had no idea Archie said that. I don't even remember it. So it didn't affect me one bit at all. And I mean, respectfully, like you're going into a national setup where, again, another amazing experience and absolutely ridiculous. But, I only got the opportunity once out of the 4 times that I was able to represent my country to actually be in the group with the likes of, Harry and Tim and those boys. And to me, that was something that I'll cherish forever. You know what I mean? And obviously the Caps are fantastic and it's every kid's dream to play for your country. And, I'm not taking that lightly at all, but, it was an A-League based team. You know what I mean? And I was lucky enough to be one of the the players that Pim had to pick. You know what I mean? But I don't care. I got in. You know what I mean? So it's something I don't degrade by any means, but I also understand that's the reality of it as well. If I was getting a starting spot with the likes of Timmy and Harry, or those sort of players at the time, and Brett Emmett and all these sort of ones, that's a different kettle of fish altogether, respectfully. So, yeah, mate, I didn't take notice of Pim. He just said what he thought. That's normal.
I mean, Pim saying the players were utterly hopeless, or the performance was utterly hopeless, might have been a bit dejecting for some. But for you during that match, personally, how do you think you went? Do you think you were sort of better than what the coach's comment said? Did you think you did okay?
Yeah, I was a right back. I mean, I still laugh at I played the games that I did for Australia at left and right back. Because I only played there for a year, I think, at Newcastle. So defensively, I did my job. You know what I mean? Like I can't remember whether I was nervous or not. I don't think I was because, like I said, I mean, most of the guys I knew as well. We'd seen them on a weekly, well, like I said, on during games, and played with some of them already anyway. So that already felt comfortable. But yeah, the fact that I didn't think I played bad, but it was warm, and I remember the pitch was horrible. I think from memory the pitch was. Did Archie say that as well? Archie would say anything. To be fair,
He's a
that's why I
character.
like. Yeah, that's why I like him. But yeah, look, mate, I actually don't really reminisce on the game. I don't even think I've ever watched it back, to be honest, which is probably doesn't surprise you now. Maybe I should, and I'll ask you. I'll go and look for it, and I'll ring you back and let you know how it went. Because now I don't know. Pim's got me. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if you've seen the photo going around, but there's a few classic photos from the Melbourne Heart era. Obviously, they didn't have the financial backing that they did now at the moment, being Melbourne City. They were one of the more, let's say, humble outfits in the A-League. And there's a photo that goes around all the time of a few of the boys doing ice recovery sessions in the wheelie bin.
Yeah.
Now, what was the experience like in Melbourne Heart? Was it really sort of like, recovery sessions in wheelie bins and secondhand kits and everything, or was it a bit more professional than the photos and stories might let on?
No, you know what? I thought it was great. And this is what I mean. Like, if you don't actually watch football or hear how they do things, you've got nothing else to compare it to, right? And I generally think, oh, here's a story. When we went to train, we had bottled water, like in, Mount Franklin bottled water. I thought that was amazing because at Newcastle, it got filled up at the tap around the corner in the dunny. Do you know what I mean? Like, you filled up your bottle. So I just remember thinking, we've actually got bottles of water. Like, I was amazed. We had a kitchen room where you could go in and make yourself some cereal, and it was free. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I don't know. Like, I guess you're just grateful for what it is. You know what I mean? So jumping in a bin, I didn't care. It was clean. This is not as if it had rubbish and Macca's wrappers in it. Like, it was a brand new bin they filled up with water. Made sense. Like, I hate the ones that you got to crouch down in. At least you could stand up in those, and you know what I mean. So yeah, I've seen those photos. Like, I remember Clint Bolton doing under the head and all that, and I thought he was nuts for doing that because it's freezing. But mate, I mean, I know now the technology, like like I know that they've upped everything since then. But that's what happens, right? Like, you speak to our parents and they wouldn't know what an ice bath was. So I guess it evolves, right? And I was happy with that. I thought Melbourne Heart done everything that they could and try to make it as professional as they could. Like, I don't think they tried to cut corners at all. Funny enough.
You alluded to it earlier, sorry, that unfortunately things kind of at the end, weren't they didn't go to plan at Melbourne Heart. A few of the boys got scapegoated after a bad season, but you ended up going to Sydney FC, who at the time they had Del Piero. They've always had
Yeah.
this reputation of being this big club who have big players and sort of big expectations. So what was it like playing at Sydney FC, and were you surprised that you kind of got given this lifeline and got so much faith put in you straight away from the Sydney FC gaffer?
Yeah, look, it's this is where things get interesting. It's funny, you be careful what you wish for, right? Um yeah, so when I left Melbourne, that that was a shock. I was a little disappointed not to yes, to be told that you're not wanted. But how it went down, I guess I think I expected it to go differently. Um, in terms of who actually told me that I wasn't interested, I wasn't involved. I thought that was a bit um, wrong and how it was done and the timing of it as well. And just to be a bit selfish, I mean, we were expecting our second at the time, which the club was obviously aware of. So I think I asked a few questions about what the plan of attack was, if you don't mind, because as you know, I think there's a certain amount of time that your partner can't fly after a certain amount of time, and it was getting to that level. Obviously, everyone knew that she was pregnant, of course, and they decided to tell us when it was nearly too late. So it became a bit of a concern from a dad, husband point of view, right? So yeah, that we can move on from that bit. And Sydney came up at the 11th hour, to be honest with you. Like, I trialled at Adelaide and they offered me 30K. Don't care about telling you that because it was an injury waiver for someone else. And I was like, I can't pick up my family, do that. Like I said, if football was in my blood, I would have done it. You know what I mean? But it's not. So I was like, no thanks. Then I went to Wellington, trialled with Wellington with Jura when Paul Eiffel and that were there, when they were really good. And, the talks of signing there looked very likely. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And Ernie rang me and said, that's it. But that's football, right? So there's nothing wrong with that at all. That just happens. And And to be fair, I'll go back to Nicky Carl. He was at Sydney FC and Frank Farina was the coach there. And I think I got a call a week before the first game. I was in Brisbane. I had to relocate to Brisbane because her family, my wife's family at the time, was there, and we obviously needed some care. And while I was going back to Adelaide and trialing with Wellington and all that, she needed to be somewhere to be looked after because we, whether we had our second at the time or not, I can't remember. But anyway, I actually signed the contract with Sydney after the warm up before the first game. So I trained there for the week and everything. I think, again, I don't know how many days I was there, but I literally got there on the Monday and the game was on the Saturday. And they said, okay, we're going to sign you on the Thursday. And the paperwork took, longer than I wanted. And it come back, that moment come back to bite me in the ass when I got an offer. They'd signed me for 12 weeks as an injury waiver to Brian Grant. And I got an offer from someone else overseas and they didn't let me go. And I resented them for it. And that's why I entered City shit. Yeah, I remember that. It wasn't a good time, City, to be fair. And I don't mind saying that. And from the outside looking in, they always had the best training gear. They probably didn't have bins. All the outsiders looking in, and particularly when it was at Newcastle, you know what I mean? Like you got the gear and that, and you sort of felt like ours looked like they were ripped, but theirs looked like they were fitted and, were sort of manicured and all the above. And I remember thinking, oh, that's great. But yeah, no, it wasn't. And I guess after a while, once you're there for a bit, there's so much stuff that happened there, mate. How much time you got? But it's funny, and not just to me. But yeah, look, again, it was good because it was a shame actually because I was in Sydney, finally my hometown, which I hadn't played in so long. So I actually had mates coming to the game, and yeah, my head just wasn't in it in the end. And yeah, I only spent the year there, so I'd only signed, like I said, from first game. So I don't know how long the season goes for, 5 months or something. So I was only there for 5 months or 6 months, and that was it. That was done, and then I actually went to Thailand after that. That was amazing.
This football, I know you played, a bit of local league and everything, but you're now, if I'm not mistaken, in real estate. And it seems to be a common trend with a lot of footballers, both playing, semi-professionally in the NPL or retiring, going into that sort of industry. So why do you think, from your point of view, a lot of footballers are leaning towards this industry, and how are you enjoying it?
I love it. Who else? I know Richie Garcia is doing it. And there's a couple of players that I played against when I was in Sydney when I was younger that are doing it, but I don't know, and you might be able to tell me who else is doing it. Do you have any names off the top of your head or not?
Anthony Golek is always posting about real estate stuff on LinkedIn. Great guy, by the way.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Mate, look, I don't know. I mean, moving house with contracts, obviously, you jump on realestate.com, you get familiar with the website. Obviously, I'm assuming that a few people might have invested in their time, so sort of understanding, that those sides of things. And I fell into it again. Like I when I moved back to Newcastle, when I stopped playing professionally, I thought I will go back to Newcastle and set up this part of our lives. And a mate who wanted me to go play with him at the NPL, he was in charge of the club there, and he happened to be in real estate. So I went there as a footballer and obviously became mates with him. And then it just rubbed off. That's how I got into it. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't as if when I was playing, I thought, this is something I'm going to do. I literally just met him, went and started playing for him, got to know him better. And yeah, started talking real estate and done my license and haven't looked back. And I love it. Like I like real estate more than I think I liked. No, I won't say that. I think I spend more my own time out of work hours with real estate than I did football. Football I did for training, and that was it. I didn't do extras and all the above. But this, I enjoy. I go home and my mind's always thinking about it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions today and talking about your incredible career. It's been very eye-opening and a little bit surprising, and I appreciate your time.
You're all right, mate. Not a problem at all. Good on you.